Bine v-am găsit, vă spunem, dragi telespectatori, la ediția din această săptămână a emisiunii Realități și perspective. Astăzi ne propunem să discutăm despre Brexit, despre imigrație, despre populism, dacă putem să spunem așa, și în general despre viitorul Europei. L-avem alături de noi pentru această discuție astăzi pe Leo van Doesburg, director pentru afaceri europene în ECPM. Este o entitate politică, parte din Parlamentul European. L-ați urmărit și în alte emisiuni. Pe Leo este și astăzi alături de noi pentru a discuta puncte sensibile din ceea ce înseamnă astăzi situația comunității europene, mai ales în condițiile în care Brexit-ul a fost și este deja o realitate în viața noastră ca cetățean ai Europei. So, Leo, welcome again in our studio for this special discussion about Brexit and EU, because you are very close to what's happening in European Parliament, and the party that you represent, it's part of EU decision, and it's an important Christian voice in European Parliament. I think we have to talk all these aspects from Christian perspective. But first of all, how do you see, as a making comments from political perspective and Christian perspective, how you see the spiritual temperature of Europe in this time? Of course, connected with Brexit. It's many people said EU is in some kind of crisis, or looking for a new identity, or have to be redefined, or there are many challenges on EU as a project, political project, economical project. Maybe you have some introduction on this subject. How do you see the challenges that EU is facing now?
Well, the EU is in a crisis. That is a thing that everyone is agreeing on. After the Brexit, there is an agreement that the EU should be reformed. However, the question is, how should it be reformed? So there are different visions on that. So the left liberals, they say, okay, the European Union was not involved enough in the problem concerning to refugees and other issues. That's why the people are more Eurosceptic. We see more Eurosceptic voices in different countries taking place. So we should have more Europe. Others says, no, we should have less Europe. Actually, it's interesting that this year, it is 50 years ago, that the Treaty of Rome has been signed. And the Treaty of Rome was the basis of the European Economic Community, which is the basis of the EU. So it should have been a celebration. However, there is so many different visions on Europe, is that the European Commission developed a white paper that actually explains 5 possible strategies in Europe. So the first strategy says the EU continues as before. The second strategy is the EU becomes only a single market and nothing more. The third strategy is those countries who want to do more can do more, a kind of a multi-speed in Europe. A fourth strategy is, well, we do less, but in a better way. And the fifth strategy is we do much more together. So these are the 5 strategies presented by the European Commission, and it shows the tension that is taking place, because the reality is that there is a high number of Euroscepticism in different. There is a less trust in Europe. There is a crisis in this. We had a Euro crisis, a Brexit, a refugee crisis, and so on. So there should be changed something. So it creates the atmosphere on what it is. So it is tension, and it is really a way, it's like, how does Europe want to develop?
Yes, this was an introduction of our subject, but let's have a video talking about the consequences of the Brexit from Christian perspective, that video report that we just get from one of our correspondents from UK.
The UK has formally begun the process of leaving the European Union. Theresa May issued the letter invoking Article 50, which starts the 2-year process with the negotiations between the UK government and the European Union, which will work out the terms of how the UK leave the European Union, whether that's in terms of the laws that they keep and the laws that they discard, the trade arrangements, the economics of that. So that's going to take a process of probably the best part of 2 years, and then in 2019 the UK will actually leave the EU.
How has the UK church responded? Because it's really divided the nation.
Well, just like the UK as a whole, the church is divided on this subject. There are some who are really excited about the opportunities and the possibilities of being outside of the European Union, whereas there are others who are upset about the decision and are disappointed in the result and would rather we weren't leaving. And I think in that way, as in many others, the way Christians are responding to political issues often mirrors the general public, and you see the same divides and the same tensions. So there is a challenge for the church in dealing with that as well.
How has the Evangelical Alliance responded to Brexit? If you like to look at Brexit, and how are you encouraging the church to respond?
We want to see Christians passionately engaged in politics ahead of the referendum. We try to encourage Christians to think through the issues, think through the topics. And now that the vote took place, the decision's been taken, and Article 50 and the process of leaving has begun, we are trying to encourage Christians to continue to stay engaged. That means that we'll pray for our politicians, pray for Prime Minister Theresa May and the other ministers in her government. Pray that the negotiations go well, that there are good relationships with the European Union. We might be leaving the European Union, but we actually will still want to have good relationships in the years that come. But also, it's not just prayer. We want Christians to take action. If we want to think about the kind of society we want in the future, what is it going to look like for the UK outside of the European Union? We have a responsibility for that. We have a responsibility to work towards the sort of society we want. So we're trying to encourage Christians to think about their communities, their neighbourhoods, their workplaces. What are the things that they can do to build a better society in those places, to model Christ in their neighbourhoods and in the places they live, and by doing that play a part in a way that actually it's far harder and often impossible for politicians to do.
What do you think will pose the biggest challenges for the UK when we actually finally, at the moment and when it actually happens, the economy, our relationship with Europe, what are the biggest challenges?
I think there are some huge challenges to the process of Brexit. I think handling the vast number of laws that we have and the way they're integrated between EU legislation and UK legislation, that's a really difficult task for Parliament over the next couple of years. I think there will be a challenge in terms of trade. The European Union is a free trade area, trying to work out what the arrangements are. But I think there is a bigger challenge that almost sits above all of that. It is asking the question, what do we want? What kind of society do we want? Do we want to have a society that values the love and the justice and the compassion that we see modelled in Christian teaching and in the person of Jesus? Or do we actually want a more kind of market-driven, consumeristic society that's all about an individual person? So I think there is a task for Christians in that, in the kind of society that we want. I think there will be financial challenges. I think as we go through the process, there's going to be some turbulence and some uncertainty. And the responsibility there for Christians is to not ignore the challenges, not be blind to the difficulties, but to be positive and be hopeful about the difference that can be made and the opportunities if they do take and play a full part in the country and in their society in the years to come.
And just finally, on the opposite, what are the biggest advantages to leaving the European Union, do you think?
I think that over the coming years we'll see a lot of opportunities, whether it's down to our own domestic legislation, our trading opportunities, and I think some of the challenges that we see around trade and around laws will be advantages as well. I think it could be challenging, but I think there are those opportunities, and I think there's a confidence that is needed to say, okay, whether or not we wanted to be leaving the European Union, and I think it's fair to acknowledge the differences that people had on that. Actually, if we work together, if we are united, if we are committed to building a stronger and a better society, then as Christians we can play a part in that. And I think if as a society at this point we're reflecting on our purpose and reflecting on the kind of country we want. This is an opportunity for us. So whatever we thought about Brexit, the fact that it's happening is an opportunity to contribute to the kind of society we want in the future.
We are in the Alpha Omega TV studio at Realities and Perspective program. So we saw a short video tape recently in UK. It's a UK perspective on Brexit. Was some comments, some optimistic point of view from the person who gave us this interview. My question is, let's make some, not exactly a plan, to see what will happen in the following 2 years. I'm asking you about Brexit and about possible events in the next 2 years, because we have a lot of Romanians living in UK, many churches, many Romanian churches, and what's happened there is it's important also for us as a Romanian nation.
Let's first look a little bit behind this referendum. So actually there was a referendum, was there in June last year, and then a majority actually decided that's better to leave the European Union. The interesting thing is that the majority was for remaining in the European Union was Northern Ireland, Scotland, Gibraltar, and London. So that created a kind of tension. What was interesting, what I think was a big mistake, is that if you look to the Brexit campaign or the remaining campaign, it's not really realized what will be really the consequences of a Brexit. I don't think it's very clear. In the campaign, before the Brexit happened, the biggest issue was about EU immigrants, as you mentioned, like, for example, Romanian workers in the United Kingdom, or Dutch workers, they say taking the jobs of the people from the United Kingdom. However, so 70% says this is a problem. However, at the other hand, 90% wants to remain the common market, because the European Union is a common market. Then we right away tackle the first problem. Because the European Union, the common market, is based on 4 freedoms. One is the freedom of movement of people and establishment. The second is the free movement of capital, services and goods. So this is based on the four different movements. So actually it means that the free movement of people is the right to establish in a country, to be under the same laws as the nationals and so on. Even if you are not part of the European Union, like Switzerland and Norway, they have to respect these freedoms. So Norway and Switzerland, they are even part of the Schengen. So it goes even, without the borders. So the European Commission, right away after the Brexit, said this will not be a compromise. So either you will be on the common market, and that means you respect the 4 freedoms, either you leave this common market. Now, Theresa May, pressed on the results of this, chose for the second option. So that means you don't want to, you don't part of this common market. Then, what happened the 29th of March, the letter officially was sent from Theresa May to the President of the European Council, Donald Tusk, with the question to leave the EU. So what will happen then? Well, as what was mentioned in it, Article 50 of the Treaty of Lisbon, or also called the Treaty of the European Union, is triggered. So it started. That means there is that treaty describes the procedures on how to leave. So every country has the right to leave the EU, but there are certain ways how to do it. So they have 2 years, that was mentioned, to negotiate an exit deal, to setting out the arrangement of how to exit. So it's like a divorce, so how will it leave the EU? And there should be an arrangement. If there is no arrangement, then the UK, United Kingdom, will leave the EU. And that means, if you look to the common market, that the tariffs, which are higher, of the World Trade Organizations are on its place. So that is very disadvantageous.
For the UK? For
the United Kingdom, yeah. And also it will have, of course, consequences for, that's called the dirty Brexit, yes. So they have 2 years to negotiate an agreement on how to do. Well, this creates, of course, very much uncertainty for the businesses. So if Theresa May said, like, well, okay, we choose not to part of the common market, how is it then with all the companies who are established there? Do they have to pay tariffs, quotas, or how will it work? So Theresa May said that besides of the criteria or the arrangement to leave the EU, she also wants to discuss about the future partnership of the EU. But the treaty says it is not possible to discuss about the future partnership if there has not been sufficient progress of leaving the EU. So first, the United Kingdom have to show sufficient progress, although, you know, the European Council can decide what does it mean sufficient progress, but there should be progress made in order to leave to the EU. Another thing in the procedure says that United Kingdom is still part of the customs union. So that will say that during this period of 2 years, they are not allowed to negotiate with third parties, kind of trade agreements. So they are still bound to the European, to Europe, which create, of course, a lot of uncertainty because, and that is why Theresa May wants to discuss also about the future partnership because it creates a lot of uncertainty. What will happen after these 2 years? So this is already, in my opinion, already a kind of a difficult situation in what they are in. So, well, if we see that 70% want limited EU immigrations, but 90% wants to remain the common market, which is actually not possible. You cannot have the common market and things. But also, like, okay, what products or what will be allowed in the European market? It is unclear. And the EU will not want that there will be a better deal made of countries who are not in the EU. So generally, there should be already a more difficult situation of the United Kingdom in relations to the EU. So there's a lot of uncertainty. And think about small startups which starting in the United Kingdom or international companies, but also, you know, the finance. London was always the finance, capital almost. But if there is such a big period of uncertainty, how does it affect the financial markets of the sterling and so on? So there's so much uncertainty. And then the people living in the United Kingdom and people living in Europe, okay, there will be limitations on immigration. Okay, that is what the United Kingdom wanted based on this. So the right of establishment of EU immigrants going there, but how far does it go? What of criteria? But also, how will it be with the people from the United Kingdom living in Europe, in different European countries? So there is a lot of things that is going on. I see also friends trying to apply for, extra citizenship or leaving the UK or not. That is one of the consequences.
You mentioned a few minutes ago that was different approach and understanding at a referendum from different regions of UK about Brexit
Yes.
or not Brexit.
Yeah.
This could be a danger in the future for the future of United Kingdom. Many people say that maybe United Kingdom after Brexit on a long term or short term could be break apart. This is a possibility.
That is a serious threat. The Northern Ireland, for example, voted for the majority for a remain, so to remain in the European Union. But if the United Kingdom is going to go out of the European Union, you have certainly a border with Ireland. Normally you have the free movement of capital and everything between Ireland and Northern Ireland. How will that work? And will there be not a push for reunification of Northern Ireland with Ireland? That is one of the questions. How will the relations between Ireland and Northern Ireland? That's one issue. Second, already Scotland announced that they wanted to have a new referendum. Then is the question that imagine that Scotland will be independent. Can Scotland then apply for EU membership? Because that then happened. That's also difficult because for an EU membership, you need to have the approval of all the 27 other countries. Well, there are countries who are not in favor of breakaway regions to becoming part of the European Union. So it's a question If they can become part of the European Union after they break away, that's another question. And then we have the question concerning to Gibraltar. Spain already announced that they want to have, the position concerning to Gibraltar. And the European Commission said that first there should be an agreement with Spain, with the United Kingdom, concerning to Gibraltar. So already it started to move in the situation, which the United Kingdom already used very strong words that they will never agree with this. So what is going to happen? I mean, so in my opinion, it is indeed a problem concerning to the United Kingdom as a whole country. Will there be a referendum? Of course, the government says that they are not in favor to have a referendum under these circumstances, as they said. Scotland still want to continue doing this. So yes, the unity, and then London as the capital, in which the majority wanted actually to remain in the European Union.
The financial capital, as you said, in Europe, part of the leadership of EU, in fact, was concentrated in London.
Yeah, the danger is that companies are going to leave the United Kingdom, especially this is the 2 years which still has to go. And if there is no agreement, then the United Kingdom will leave. All the treaties will not be valid anymore. The jurisdiction of the EU Court of Justice will not be the customs union. I mean, there will not be there. And the 2 years, so this procedure has been triggered and can only be stopped or postponed if there is a unanimity decision of all the 27 other countries, which makes it very hard either to postpone, either to stop it. So it is a process going on, which is...
It started already a month ago.
It started on the 29th of March. So until 2019, so on 29th of March, officially the letter has been solved that the United Kingdom will quit the single market, will quit the customs union, and will quit the jurisdictions of the EU Court of Justice.
I have two short questions. I have friends in the UK, Christian friends involved in media. They said many Christian churches enjoy this decision because now they have some kind of surety that for the spiritual freedom. They're will be not obliged anymore to obey some restricted law from EU. It's true this?
Well, if you see to the United Kingdom, there are a lot of problems concerning to Christian freedoms there. On the wearing of religious symbols, there were several court cases. And that was not because of European law. Their laws were actually more stricter than the European laws. The European laws concerning to the freedom for Christians, actually. So I think that there is also a lot of things not realized, what are the consequences of the things that are happening. And I think that the Brexit campaign actually was not completely honest on the things that will happen. For example, the relations with the common market and the four freedoms that there are. So I believe that this is a problem, and I'm wondering, like, if people would realize it now, what does it all contain? Would there be still a majority voting for this, yes or no? But it fits also what I think that the European Union did wrong in the process. So before the referendum, there were negotiations, and there was in February 2016 there was an agreement made, which gave certain kind of exemption to the United Kingdom. But that was wrong. I mean, the EU should have been reformed. There should be part of a wider reform. So the people in the United Kingdom, they could not say that they have a lot of trust. Okay, they have now a certain exemption. But the European Union still is the same as that it is. And for the people in the European Union, besides of the United Kingdom, will say, why does United Kingdom get exceptions? So I think that this whole process went also wrong in this respect. And I think that the urgent call to reform the European Union was not actually respected. And that has been realized in a Brexit.
Yes, we in Romania, we are not a small country, but country who came later in EU entity, and maybe Holland, that your native country, it's a small country, but talk about UK, Germany, France, EU without UK will be, people said there will be a new kind of leadership, maybe Germany and France. Maybe some comment from your perspective. Will be a new shift or a rearrangement of leadership in Europe, if we can say like
United
this?
Kingdom was always a balance. I mean, it has actually, I think 2 times that the United Kingdom was asked for membership, and they were always blocked by France, by de Gaulle in that time, who has this empty chair politics in order not to be able to vote for accession of the United Kingdom to the European Union. The position of the Netherlands in that time was that we need to have a balance between France and Germany. It's good to have the United Kingdom as more as a transatlantic partner, also more as a balance between France and Germany. And the United Kingdom always had a special situation within the European Union. So yeah, there is actually a fear that it will be like a kind of a France-German leadership. Well, one of those 5 strategies that I mentioned was this kind of multi-speed strategy. So there was an idea that, for example, the stronger countries form a group like France and Germany and the Netherlands. But then if you look to the position, for example, of the Netherlands, you can say like, why should we, if we follow like this multi-speed, that means that we want to keep up with the speed. So does it mean that we have to accept what France and Germany will decide, will it do? So will we not lose our own thing? And then you will create different speeds within the European Union. Now you're still talking about the solidarity. Do we not talk about inferior countries and superior countries? So it is very interesting questions what will go happen.
Leo, you mentioned at the beginning of our discussion, before talking about the Brexit, about few ways that the European community will go. Already you say a few moments ago about multi-speed. Maybe you can put together again these possibilities for the people who came to our program later.
So the first, so in the white paper, actually that was presented on the anniversary of the treaty in Rome, the European Commission mentioned 5 scenarios. So the first scenario could be the EU continues as before, as it is working now. Well, in my opinion, that is not a very good strategy because it resulted in a Brexit, it resulted in a euro crisis, it resulted in a refugee crisis, Euroscepticism growing in all over Europe. So I don't think that the European Union can be blind on really the challenges that are here now. Also one of the strategies is to have more Europe. So we should do more together. So the EU should actually have more competences as it has now. The idea behind is that people think like, well, we did not solve the problem in the world, so we should be really a union. So how can we actually solve the problem if we are not really an economic union or a federal Europe and so on? But this will create probably in more exits, because you see that the Euroscepticism is growing in different countries. So if Europe is going to get more involved, and actually the general complaint is that Europe is getting too much involved in the different countries, and that the identity of different countries are away. So we should not follow in my opinion, the political agenda and ideologies of a left liberal leadership of the European Union, but we should be really serving the people. So that's, in my opinion, also not a good option. Then we have an option like, okay, maybe the European Union, also an option is that the European Union can become just a single market and nothing more. So just on the common market. But then it is also difficult because there are many areas in which Europe should collaborate together. Think about environment, the fight against terrorism, refugee crisis, and so on. So, and also the EU will lose its credibility if you're focusing also to the single market. Another strategy is what I mentioned, is the multi-speed strategy. Countries who want to do more, and others need. But yeah, this is eroding the sense of unity amongst member states. What is the solidarity and what is the relation between, for example, the southern countries, northern countries? And then the last is what we actually think is the best strategy, is do less but in a better way. So concentrate on a closer collaboration on environment, terrorism, common market, and so on, but leave things out which is not the competence of the EU, leaves things out like family policy, social policy, health policies, cultures, and respect that Europe is diverse in its cultures and its traditions, that don't push, for example, same-sex marriages on countries who don't want to have this, or pushes on focusing on abortion as a right which is not a right, and try to focus on the areas really that countries cannot do it on themselves. If a country can solve the problems or being involved on themselves, they should focus on this. So these are the 5 areas actually that we say, well, we should go back to this, to the roots.
Thank you for this summary. At least we as a Christian, we know how to pray for the future of EU, because EU it's our area now. We are part of EU, and we don't have to neglect the challenges that EU is facing now. You mentioned one of the aspects, the immigrants, the terrorist aspects, who is a big challenge for Europe. We want to talk in the next minutes about this, but first of all, we are looking to a spot about the potential danger of the immigrants in Europe.
Telling us the truth. That's what people in Europe have been saying after they found out their governments and news media have been covering up the actions of some of the immigrants in their countries. And those actions include crime, chaos, and terrorism. Dale Hurd brings us the shocking report.
We now know there has been a cover-up by governments and the media in Western Europe about the potential danger of immigration from the Islamic world. It was a conspiracy involving politicians, police officials, and journalists. Europeans were programmed by a relentless media campaign to believe immigration was good, and criticism of immigration was racist. Months before the deadly Islamic terror attacks in Belgium, left-wing demonstrators were playing dead in the streets, protesting for more immigration from the Middle East and against stronger borders in Europe. Stronger borders that might have saved the lives of 34 people killed in Brussels last month.
No more walls in Europe.
The left's mantra has been no walls, no borders. But many Europeans now realize they were sold a bill of goods about open borders and immigration. Media campaigns like this were meant to condition Europeans to feel badly about opposing immigration.
But one thing Vincent has always had a problem with is foreigners, especially the new lot. All these Ivankas, Elenas, Bogdans, or Pedro, Joaos, social benefits abusers, stealing honest people's jobs for peanuts as a wage, stealing people's lives, wives, even their cats.
Voices who warned about the threat from open immigration were either branded racist or simply ignored. This Belgian Jewish leader warned CBN News a year and a half ago that the Belgian government was too soft on Muslim extremists and more attacks were coming.
You know, we say, I don't know if I will say it right in English, but if you want to eat with the devil, you need a very long fork. I don't know if we say it in English. I think that there is no fork long enough to eat with Islamism.
And the multicultural charade has crumbled. In Germany, when the city of Cologne was caught trying to cover up massive New Year's sex attacks. In Sweden, where the public learned that the police and the media covered up large-scale sexual assaults at a summer music festival in Stockholm last year. And in Brussels, which became a home to some of the most dangerous terrorists in Europe. In cities across Western Europe, women are now afraid to walk alone at night on the street. Muslims make up almost half of Belgium's prison population. Jews everywhere live in fear. This didn't just happen, but in many cases the information about it was suppressed. Sweden has been notorious for censoring the problems of immigration. Newspapers obscured the faces and changed the skin tone of crime suspects with immigrant backgrounds, but showed their faces if they were white native Swedes. The Swedish police even had a special code when handling immigrant crime, 291. Swedish policy analyst Tino Sanandaji.
Code 291, and this is, now in every Swedish newspaper is reporting this. The police were told to cover up any crime relating to the refugees. Do not tell the media, do not leave a paper trail. So, and apparently we're finding out now that there were hundreds of violent crimes.
Some Swedes have become so frustrated with the censorship that they go to social media to get the truth out themselves.
Hey, welcome to Sweden. This is the #1 rape capital of Europe.
A lot of Swedes are angry. They realize they've been lied to. And some are wondering, what else are the government and media hiding from us?
You have a lot of problems that were never reported until a few, literally days ago. But they decided it was against their ideological agenda. They covered it up.
The man who found evidence that one of Sweden's largest papers covered up the sex assaults in Stockholm is journalist Chang Frick, who says journalists have been either too afraid or not allowed to report the truth.
I read books by Kafka, and I read books about what life was in Soviet Union and this and that. Everybody was checking each other. This is the situation we got in Sweden, but it's more in a soft way. You don't get in jail for having the wrong thoughts. You lose your job, you would get social stigmatized.
The paper Dagens Nyheter says the claim that it was part of a cover-up is a lie and that it could not confirm the story. Ingrid Carlquist, a distinguished fellow at the Gatestone Institute, has been warning Swedes for years that they were being misled about immigration. Now she feels vindication.
I've been trying to tell the Swedish people, this for 5 years or something. And everybody said, no, it couldn't be like that. Politicians don't lie like that. They lie about little things. They don't lie about big things. Journalists, they are honest. They couldn't lie about this. No. Now everything has exploded. And there is not a person, there is not a living person in this country who can go on doing like this. Because now it's out there.
Swedish immigration policy has now changed. It was forced to because it faced a system-wide collapse. But if you think the European left has learned its lesson about the danger of open borders, you would be wrong. After the Brussels attack, there were several articles essentially blaming terrorism on racism and calling for continued open borders. There are, of course, refugees who need help, but Europe's misplaced generosity has brought war to its doorstep, and some believe that politicians, police officials, and journalists now have blood on their hands. Dale Hurd, CBN News, reporting from Brussels and Stockholm.
We're again in Alpha Omega TV studio at Realities and Perspective program. Yes, a very sensitive issue. How we as a Christian, we have to combine our desire to help someone in need with our concern about security and to be concerned about social turbulence. It's difficult for us as a Christian, even here in Romania, to approach this subject from these two perspectives.
I think it's a very complicated situation. I mean, on the video, it's like I hear many things about it's the Muslims who are a problem, and it's like conspiracies. But I think we have to discuss it in different areas. First of all, I don't think that we can mention that Muslims are terrorists. It looks like Muslims is like a kind of a political movement and things like this. I was in Brussels when the attack happened. I went to the memorial, as you saw when the candles. What I was noticed is that there were also a lot of Muslims there, actually also afraid on what is happening, because there were also Muslims killed in the attack. And they, one person that I spoke to, and I was speaking with the people there, and I think that's the first thing to reach out, saying like, well, I'm afraid also because we are double afraid, because we are seen as to be blamed. Well, I did not do this. So this is one thing. It's about Muslims and about terrorism. There is a problem concerning to the integration. We're talking about finding the integration of different cultures in a society. And I think that should be a little bit more strict and more attentive. For example, in Amsterdam, I know that there is a project in the Bijlmer, which is the area where the most allochthone population are living, more foreigners are living. And you see that the police actually are developing, have a program with schools and with communities there, and they created a kind of a level of trust. So with families and people, if they notice things are going wrong or there are terrorists there, that they can actually have the freedom also to tell this to the police. So the police is not like the enemy. And that's also a problem that happened in Belgium, that the police was very strong and seeing like a kind of, again, so I'm a little bit thinking like, well, what is the relations between the Muslims, the immigrations? Many of the terrorist attackers were actually born in the country, so they were not coming from the refugees. That's one of the things that we also need to know. So many people were born who are doing this attack, but they were based on the propaganda on social medias of IS and so on. They were attracted to go to Syria, to those camps and so on, in order to learn how to fight. Many refugees are actually running away from the same problems as that we are facing. So I'm a little bit careful to say, to put, okay, immigration is the problem, there are the terrorists are coming from. No. If they have a possibility to use the immigration flows in order to create a kind of a way to get the terrorists in, that might be a problem. But I mean, but we have the problems of, for example, of the adaptation. I'm thinking also there is another issue is that, for example, in many Open Doors from Germany, they made a report about the situation of Christians in refugee camps in Europe. They have also a lot of discrimination and dealing on the situation. So yes, there is a problem. There is a lot of fear. How can we deal as Christians? I mean, people are coming, if they are coming from war areas, we should help them. That's also as we then treat is with them. In the same moment, you try to get the security and the collaboration and fight against terrorism. Because in Belgium, there was a lot of things that went wrong on the European collaboration also. So the attacker was who did these attacks, he could go away. He was for previous criminality, he was convicted, then he went away, he could go to the Netherlands, there was no collaboration of the truth, there was no sharing of information and so on. So I'm think like, yes, there is a problem, but the problem is if we are blaming the Muslims for it, you create actually more like fear and infrastructures that terrorism can flourish more and more. So I'm more a little bit like careful of having the Muslims, as a religion. Being this, I have Muslim friends also in Belgium who actually are completely against all these issues, and if they would see anything that they would avoid that also. So this is the balance that I see that we should feel.
Maybe you can add the short comments, because there are a lot of Muslim communities in Europe, in different countries, and I know in some area they want to live under their law, and we as European Christians with the Christian values in our nations, we are concerned about the possibility that some laws will be imposed in different regions, part of even countries. How we should address this, how to pray for this, how to encourage our politicians to vote if needed for this kind of problems.
Yeah, I mean, this is first of all that we should fight against this. I mean, the Sharia law or what they want to introduce, that never should be the basis of the law. The rule of law of the countries, that is the basis, of course. That is the things, and we should pray for this. And I think that also the biggest element is the problem concerning to the integration of people. It seems that the multicultural society and its forms really did not work. And it is, and we have really to think about what has to be changed. But of course, we should never accept any Sharia laws within our democratic elected countries.
We want in the last 10 minutes of the program to talk about the raising of the populist spirit or national spirit in different countries. I'll be back with you in a few minutes. We are at Realities and Perspective. We want to talk in the last few minutes of the program about so-called nationalist spirit or populist spirit in different countries in Europe. We are concerned about this. We saw different elections or preparation for election in many countries, and Many people said it's a new wave in the political area in different countries in Europe, even in Holland or in France or in Austria or Germany or even Hungary. How comments do you make on this? How we can talk, maybe talking about populist or populism spirit is not exactly the right word, or national spirit, maybe people said Nazi spirit or radical spirit or far left or right position in the political arena.
Well, it's an interesting word, populism. We had just the Dutch elections, and people were very relieved to say, like, there was like, okay, the populism did not win in the Netherlands. That was on several media that I saw. On the same moment, I saw that the party of Geert Wilders was a more right-wing party, won more seats. That we have a party with a Turkish party with 2 members in the Dutch parliament, that the Dutch Party for the Animals has agreed with a number of seats. And there is a new party also going for 2 seats. So populism is something that can be left and right. You can have left populism that really wants to, focusing on the ideal, and the right populism. I believe that the skepticism and the nationalism is increasing in different countries. I never believed that there has been a European identity. I mean, like, if you compare it with the United States, everyone hangs the flag of the United States outside their houses or the building. I hardly see any European flag here on a building or a house. So it shows already, like, what is our identity? We are, for example, we are Romanians or we are Dutch, and then we are Europeans. So if the European Union is continuously trying to push this kind of identity, try to create a common identity based on left liberal ideologies, I think that this is increasing also the Euroscepticism. If Europe is getting more and more involved in the different countries, I think that nationalism is also getting stronger. And I believe also that sometimes maybe it also has the matter that if you look to Western Europe, is that values were broken down. I mean, like the role of the church, the role of the communities, the role of families, and everything has been dismantled. And I think at a certain moment we're looking also to an identity and what does connect us with each other, and that it is searching for a new identity and a new national identity. It's very interesting. I give you an example. A few years ago, it was like 500 years that John Calvin died, and Dutch people call themselves always Calvinists. And suddenly you have mugs and T-shirts about Calvin, and you could calculate the own Kelvin factor on. So you see that people are. I think this is also a matter like people trying to look and find their identity. And the European Union, I don't think that this is an identity that people are looking for.
Yes, but it's true, because in many countries, European countries, it's a rhetoric, anti-Muslim rhetoric, even anti-EU rhetoric, or anti-immigration rhetoric that could be like a preparation or something to draw to a nationalist spirit.
Yeah. Also this, I believe also that the fear of, the Islam, the immigration, that creates actually a thinking about, okay, who are we? So then you see certainly also that Christianity is becoming more important in the societies. I believe surely that has...
Maybe a short comment on France, because the election in France looks to be interesting. People are afraid or concerned about the party who is left-right party, so radical, could be in power. What will be the meaning if, let's say, this party will be in power? What will be the consequences for us as a other country in Europe or as a Christians?
Well, if the party of Le Pen wins the National Front, then the first thing what they try to do is to get out of the European Union. That's one of the issues that they...
on their agenda.
On their agenda. So that will be as a consequence. I don't know, concerning to the French system, if they really have this, because then she should win in the first round. And that means with the majority. If there is a second round, I think that the opposition, whoever it is, that they will run after one candidate as they did before. So that makes the chances quite smaller that Le Pen really will win the elections. But as it is lately with all the elections, you never know what is happening.
Good question. For the last 5 minutes, I want to stay with us in the studio because I have a question for you. We are in the last 5 minutes in our studio. We talk a lot about Europe, about challenges that we have here in Europe, starting with Brexit, with immigration, with this nationalist spirit raising in many countries. So, and you mentioned also the 5 strategies, possible strategies for the future of Europe. So, in fact, how there are possibilities? How do you see the future of Europe? I know you are a citizen of Holland, a Dutch citizen, but also you are a citizen of European community. We are a citizen here in Romania, but also part of EU family. But first of all, we are both part of God's kingdom, citizen of heaven, I believe. So how you see the future of Europe connected with all this perspective, citizen of a nation and citizens of the God's kingdom?
It's very hard to say what development. I mean, the European Commission has not changed after the Brexit. So the European Commission is still the same European Commission, who was focusing always on either the status quo or that Europe should grow. So it's really knowing what happens. But I think that if we think about Europe, about the Europe that we actually want, when the European Union started as the first collaboration between the European coal and steel community, there were 6 countries: Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Italy, France, and Germany. And 3 of the founding fathers, 3 of the 6 founding fathers, Konrad Adenauer from Germany, Alcide de Gasperi from Italy, and Robert Schuman from France, they were believing Christians. Actually, they made this project to overcome the conflicts of wars, especially between Germany and France. So before they signed actually the treaty, they went onto a prayer retreat in order to pray for Europe and to pray for this. And based, for example, Robert Schuman, his vision was Imago Dei. We are created in the image and likeness of God. That is human dignity. Human dignity is not to stand up for your own rights, but to have the responsibility to your others. So it is actually for loving God and loving the neighbor. There came solidarity from. There came tolerance from. That is the basis of the European values. The consequence of secularism has changed this concept. So instead of taking care of seeing the human being and creating the image of likeness of God, the individual rights became the most important drive. And we as Christians believe that we have a freedom to love the other and to love God. The secularist, the freedom from. And that is where it went wrong, in my opinion. So I think that whatever we discuss about Europe, we should go to the core about what is the project all about. And as long as this spirit of reconciliation, this spirit really of solidarity will not there, it's very hard to imagine what kind of Europe, in what direction we would go. And we said our thing is that we should go to the basis. We should go to the basis elements and to see what topics we as countries really can collaborate. If we don't do this, I'm afraid that there are different scenarios possible, as I mentioned, either more exits, either different speeds of unity. It is very hard to say, but that is not the real problem. The real problem is, what is Europe, what is the vision of Europe, and who are we actually?
Leo, I have a final question for you. You are, for many years, a bridge between politicians, a catalyst factor for many movement or initiative, especially in the area of Christians involved in politics. How you see the future of Christian involved in politics? You have a voice through your party, through ECPM in the European Parliament, but in many other countries, as Romania, the voice of Christian are not so strong. Maybe we can end this talk about Brexit and EU and immigration with some consideration about the need of a Christian voice in our political areas.
I believe that every crisis, if you look to the history, offer especially opportunities for Christians. If you think about different crises happening. And I think that we must not run away. I think as Christians we need to be salt and light. And I think especially in times of crisis, I think we have a bigger role. ECPM grew in time also. We have now 6 members of parliament. We have about 40 till 50 members of parliament of about 19 different countries.
European Parliament.
No, in the European Parliament we have 6 and different national parliament. But I think what is needed is to really encourage people to pray and to enter possibilities to go in Parliament in whatever situation. If you look to the biblical situation, there always was a Daniel and an Esther and different people who had a role. And I think that this is the thing we need to pray and really ask to pray like Nehemiah did on the broken walls of Jerusalem, to really have openings and to have people really being in place and really to focus. I don't see that as a negative or things. I think actually it's our obligation, our responsibility to act in the times of crisis, to stand up based on the love of Jesus and God, based on human dignity, in order we must be involved in politics and even more in politics. I think now it is the time that we as Christians and that are politicians, that they need to work together in order to be salt and light and have a voice in European and national politics.
Thank you, Leo, for this final comment, because you put the Christian perspective on all our discussion about EU and the challenges of our nations in these times. This was a special program about EU, Brexit, immigration, populism, and the future of Europe. May God bless you. See you next week.